It has been 5 years since the Calgary woman went missing while in Las Vegas.
Jessica Foster's family believes she's a victim of human trafficking. That's where Alberta Primetime begins tonight.
She was just always very well behaved, very, very polite. Was into sports when she was younger, dance. She was doing brownies and guides and on the honor roll in high school.
She hated the thought of not being with her family. She was fun-loving and family-orientated.
It's just an all-round Canadian girl. The last time I saw Jessie and kissed her and hugged her was Christmas Day 2005.
We have a very, very deadly serious problem in Alberta with traffickers targeting Canadian women. As I began to find out more about Jessie Foster's case and the circumstances of her disappearance, the more and more that I began to realize that this case had many hallmarks of other human trafficking cases. Jessie, a bright-eyed young girl, had been working at a Boston Pizza in Kamloops before moving to Calgary to live with her father. She met a man at a party who offered her an extra ticket to Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
I told her, people don't do this for no reason. What does this person want? She was 20 years old. Basically, she says, Mom, you worry too much. There's nothing wrong. He's a nice guy. She was taken on 2 trips. And it's almost the scenario you hear about in the movies. They take them on a trip, and then they make them repay this trip.
Within a few days of their arrival, the generous stranger claimed to be broke and demanded that she repay his generosity by being sold for sex. Over the next few months, Jessie was transferred first to New York City, then to Atlantic City, and finally to Las Vegas, where she was introduced to a new man.
We obviously want to find Jessie. We don't necessarily think that the outcome is going to be positive, but we believe that the family deserves to know what happened to their daughter. Unfortunately, there is just so little evidence that there isn't really a place to turn.
It's such a roller coaster. Because I believe Jessie's alive with all my heart, right now I could, at a blink of an eye, just burst into tears, and it happens to me all the time. All the time. But I need to do this. I need to stay strong for Jessie or any other people who are going through this, or hopefully to prevent them from going through this.
Hi, I'm Glendine. I'm from Southern Interior of British Columbia, from Kamloops. Who would have thought anything like this would have ever touched our family? The healing part started when I started doing this. So every time I present, it helps. Human trafficking, okay. Modern day slavery. Coming to Calgary is extremely important. This is Jessie's birthplace. This is where she graduated high school. This is where she was recruited from.
This province is home to every form of human trafficking we've seen nationally. The annual revenue for a single victim of human trafficking, a single Canadian woman, is $280,000 per year. So it is very lucrative, and it's the reason why this crime has proliferated in Canada.
What we found out after she went missing, Jessie had been beaten, forced to work at an escort agency, and she'd been arrested for solicitation of prostitution.
Raising awareness on human trafficking is one of the most important things we can do in this day and age. It's been hidden. It's been almost like an underground crime that nobody believed. I don't cry very much.
It scares me. Not many high school students really think that it happens anywhere other than a foreign country.
I'm happy they got it, and the tears showed it.
That was my sister. I don't know what I would do. I don't think I could be as strong as they are. That's an inspiration to me, actually.
Jessie deserves better. She deserves to have the attention to find out where she is and to bring resolution to this case.
This is up to me now to make people know about Jessie and to take a little bit of Jessie away with them when they leave. This is my job, and it goes from the time I wake up in the morning till I go to bed at night. One thing I'll never do, I'll never declare Jessie dead. Never declare her dead. Not until I know in my heart And she is, and I don't know that, so. I never lose hope. To me, hope is what keeps me going.
So many things to tell you, Jess.
I will find Jessie, or I will die trying.
An emotional story for one Alberta family, and after the break we'll hear from two prominent Alberta experts on human trafficking for a better understanding of how big an issue this is in our province and what's being done to help those that are involved. Stay with us. Welcome back to Alberta Primetime. Before the break, we saw the story of Jessica Foster and her family's belief that the Calgarian disappeared 5 years ago as a victim of human trafficking. Joining us now, Jackie Linder, Executive Director of the Chrysalis Foundation Network, and an expert in trauma psychology, as well as Staff Sergeant John Fiorelli, who leads the Vice Unit with the Edmonton Police Service. Now, watching that feature, hearing Jessie Foster's story, you both directly involved in human trafficking. How far have we come in the 5 years since Jessie went missing? John, we'll start with you.
Starting back in 2005 and compared to where we are today, the awareness definitely has come leaps and bounds over the last 2 or 3 years. There's been workshops, public workshops, and national, right up to the national conferences, which was held in Ottawa last week. It's nowhere near where we would like to see the public awareness be at, but small steps, and that's where we have to start.
Jackie, your thoughts on how far we've come?
I have to concur. John and I actually were both in Ottawa just recently. We were both presenters at the National Human Trafficking Conference that was hosted by the RCMP. And what I was most inspired by in that conference was, 280 people were there, law enforcement and NGOs, all of them working on integrated models. So where I see progress is the collaboration that's going on between law enforcement and NGOs and other service providers. John actually was one of the first people to come to the ACT table, almost 4 years ago, I think now, to collaborate with various organizations.
ACT, for Albertans who may not be familiar with that?
The Action Coalition on Human Trafficking, which is based here in Edmonton, and he was one of the first people at the table to get law enforcement collaborating with Edmonton, I believe, in Canada.
Yeah, we learned very early that it's an issue that you cannot approach it by yourself. I mean, you have to reach out and you have to work together to address all issues.
How widespread of a problem is it in Alberta?
You're probably asking for statistical data, which is very difficult to pinpoint due to the different reporting systems, but I can state with great confidence that it's happening all across Alberta, including in your neighborhood, at different levels and different forms.
I can corroborate that by saying that just 2 days ago at 2 in the morning, I received a crisis call from a survivor right here in Edmonton.
It's pretty alarming stuff. Being on the streets, is there a part of the province that is seeing more action than others? I mean, you're talking about it in all of our communities, but are there some areas that are hotspots, if you will?
Again, from a policing perspective, it all depends on which agency is actively pursuing these investigations. I mean, if you speak to the RCMP, they're going to address the issue of human trafficking involving labor, which is very prominent in the northern part of the province. Here in Edmonton, we have our own issues. Calgary reports. It's ongoing. It's happening right now, and we just need to get the word out more and more.
And from the crisis intervention perspective, the calls that we've been getting on the line are actually coming out of Edmonton specifically. So I haven't had any reports from out of Calgary or other locations. I don't know what that means from the law enforcement perspective, because we know that human trafficking isn't just a street issue. It's happening in very nice apartments that people are paying lots of money for. But who's seeking help? So far, the callers have been from Edmonton.
How difficult is it to get these girls to come forward, John?
Extremely difficult, because it's based on trust and building relationships. The control that the traffickers have over these women, if we're dealing specifically with the sexual exploitation portion, they control every aspect of their life. And this has been proven through our investigations when we do have victims coming forward. And like our investigators, who are all senior investigators and have vast amount of knowledge, they too, I can see it on their face when they come out of the room, like, you won't believe this story. Like, these traffickers control every aspect of a victim. and I mean every aspect.
You know, when we watch this story about Jessie Foster, she seems like just such a normal girl, you know, the girl down the street. How do you get mixed up in this kind of thing? Is Jessie's story very typical of what we've seen?
I've read that similar circumstances far too often in the files that come across my desk. The traffickers themselves are experts in identifying individuals that they can approach and take over their will and control of making decisions on their own, and they become very dependent on the traffickers. And it could be as simple as, hey, how are you? You know, what's a beautiful girl like you doing here? Or how does one get to know you closer? And once they have that little crack of contact, then they just start building on that.
And the closest approximation I can think of would be Stockholm Syndrome, right? So there's a particular psychology that is used to penetrate the victim's armor, psychologically speaking. And one of the ways to do it is through affection and love. And we know, I mean, the cases are very clear that a lot of women are being lured into these situations by men who pretend to be partners. And so they wine and dine and date them. And in the beginning, it's all a honeymoon period until the situation starts to go really badly for them.
Why Canada? Why Alberta? We're talking here about the numbers increasing. Is it just that we're more aware now that we have this hotline, or are the numbers really getting worse?
No, we're becoming more aware, and I would like to maybe promote Alberta nationwide. I mean, at the national conference, it was pretty evident that Alberta, definitely we hold a ranking within the awareness. The collaboration that we have with our non-government agencies and the government province of Alberta, I mean, we're on the cutting edge of instituting programs and task force. I mean, we definitely have started conversations.
And when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about very close collaboration. So actually a detective in the Vice unit is actually one of the directors on the board of the Chrysalis network. That's how closely we're working with them.
You also talked about an integrated approach. What does that mean? Obviously, we're dealing with law enforcement, but what are some of the other elements that are involved in helping? I referred to women earlier, but it certainly can be both men and women.
Absolutely, both men and women. As a matter of fact, we have had men call the Chrysalis line, and interestingly enough, we've had people call from the States, which was a surprise for me, but they don't actually have a counseling line of this kind in North America. We're the first. So collaboration, people need housing. If they're making an escape in the middle of the night, they need clothing, they need somewhere to sleep, they need to eat. So exhaustion is a huge factor. We have to focus on survival issues for the first few days, stabilization, and eventually perhaps professional mental health intervention.
Jackie, you launched the hotline last year, certainly getting some phone calls. What else needs to be done to improve the situation?
For all of us, the theme that came out of the conference, everybody that's working every angle of this problem, a national integrated plan and funding. That is the bottom line. We are all doing our work on a shoestring with lots and lots of people putting in overtime, unpaid labor across the country, not just here in Edmonton, not just in law enforcement. Everybody's working for free because there isn't enough funding to go around. So that's a big deal, but also consistency across the board. So different provinces are doing different things and we're trying to align. But I say very often that, you know, the bad guys are more organized in some ways than we are. And that's a problem. This is a war, and we need to get our team together.
John, what's your assessment? How long before we see something like Jackie is talking about, a national plan?
Hard to predict because we're dealing at the national level, and first the government has to find a champion within its own ranks to move the principle forward. We are aware of a national task force approach that's been written out by Joy Smith out of Winnipeg. Yeah. But now that the election we're in the midst of the election, we know that plan's on hold.
Slow going process.
We don't know.
I say Ottawa, the politicians are slowly starting to understand the scope of this problem, and it has to be a multi-agency approach to deal with it.
Well, we'll continue to follow this one with interest as it develops. That's Jackie Linder, Executive Director of the Chrysalis Network, and Staff Sergeant John Fiorelli from the Edmonton Police Service. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much.